Alex here with a landlord-tenant video on evicting a moved-out tenant. I got 2 emails on this, or I wouldn't have even done this video because it sounds so ridiculous that there are apparently landlords out there threatening to evict tenants who are moving out early. In other words, they're breaking their lease. You can't evict somebody who doesn't live there anymore. If the dwelling unit has been abandoned, that's it. There's nobody to evict. There's nobody there. To get a little bit more serious, apparently what these landlords are trying to do is coerce, trick, intimidate these tenants into signing paperwork that they have termed early move-out paperwork. They make it seem like you're not allowed to move out early unless you sign this special paperwork. I don't understand how, I guess I could understand how people get tricked by it. It's just scary. People are, being told all these legal threats. That if they don't, and mainly it's if they don't agree to sign all this early move out paperwork, they're going to go through the eviction process, even though they won't be living there anymore because they'll be moved out, to basically scare them into thinking they're going to get an eviction on their record and they're never going to be able to get into another apartment ever again. So it's really bad. If the landlord ever actually did this, if they were like a corporation, they'd probably get hit with like a multi-million-dollar punitive damage award. So anyway, with these 2 examples, one of the people who approached me actually ended up just caving, and they signed the move-out paperwork. Which, of course, what's it going to say in early move-out paperwork? It's going to say that I agree, I'm moving out, I'm breaking the lease, I agree to waive my security deposit, and I agree to pay a fee of like $2,000, some insane amount of money, dollars. Stuff like that. It's nuts. The other person actually refused. They didn't sign any of that paperwork. They just moved out. They were presented with the early move-out paperwork, and they're like, well, we're leaving. What are you going to do about it if I don't sign it? Of course, they threatened to sue them and all that nonsense, but and of course they threatened to evict, but when they moved out, they kept an eye on their door, they kept an eye on their mail, looking for that summary eviction for non-payment of rent notice. I have a video on that if you want to see how that process works. And the notice was never posted to the door, and they never got it in the mail. So they called the landlord's bluff, and the landlord didn't actually follow through on their threat. Whether they're going to follow through on like suing for a breach of contract, who knows? We'll see. But if you do want to know, I might do a separate video on, I don't think I'm going to do a separate video. The fees associated with moving out early can often be, I hesitate to use the word often because it's going to come down to your judge, and it's going to come down to your willingness to file an appeal. But I'll go ahead and use it now since I've already used it. Can often be voided, even if you agree to it in a contract. And rather than get into all the crazy details here, I'm just going to direct people to my 2 videos, actually my 3 videos, contract unconscionability, which I think is broken down into substantive unconscionability and procedural unconscionability. So those are 2 separate videos. And adhesion contracts, which is a 3rd separate video for people to look at. You can use these principles to get out of those agreements if you've agreed to pay like $2,000 for moving out early or anything like that. The other principle you can use is duty to mitigate damages, which I'm going to do a separate video on. I'll probably do that video next. So just watch out for the next video if you want to see how duty to mitigate damages works and how you can use that to defend against a landlord who's trying to charge you a whole bunch of money for moving out early. Typically, in that context, rather than it be a fee, it's more like paying for the unit even though you're not there anymore because you broke the contract. So in that context, it's like, say you left like 3 months early, you pay for 3 months of rent. But yeah, you can get out of that using the duty to mitigate damages. I might do a separate video also on moving out early. I may or may not do that. We'll see. Because I kind of already covering it right now. But I don't know. Sometimes it helps people to have an on-point video. I feel like I've pretty much covered this topic. Just going to go ahead and circle back around to the whole principle that I made in the beginning. If you are moving out early, you can't be evicted because you're already going to be out of the unit. There's nobody to evict from an empty unit. So that's the basic premise. If you need to look into like cases or do your research on that to figure out how to actually fight it in court, in case somebody actually does try to evict you when you've already moved out, and you should fight that because it's going to put an eviction on your record and make it impossible. Not impossible, but very difficult to rent in the future. In Nevada, it's probably going to be in the context of a summary eviction for non-payment of rent. So you should fight that and basically say, you should show up at the justice court and say, I'm defending this eviction because I don't live there anymore. Don't evict me because I'm not there. If it's any other type of court case, it may or may not be more complicated, especially if they combine it with some kind of lawsuit for breach of contract, because you'll actually have to defend the breach of contract. That's a whole separate thing. And I already went over some of the other videos to check into, so I'm not going to go ahead and reiterate all that. But I think at this point, I hope I didn't go around and around a little bit too much. I just wanted to make sure that I was thorough with this topic, especially since it's kind of alarming that landlords are actually trying to do this. In fact, if anyone else has had this threat thrown their way before, please post it in the comments below, because that's weird. I've never heard of this. It never happened to me. It's just two messages that I got from two different people that makes me think it's actually a thing, at least in Nevada. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I'll see you guys next time.